will now call the June 14th, 2021 San Diego County Board of Supervisors budget hearing to order and ask the clerk to call the roll.
Thank you, Chair Fletcher. Before I call the roll, I would like to note for the record that 2 supervisors are participating via teleconference. As such, any actions will be handled by a roll call vote. Additionally, before we begin, any members of the public that wish to provide oral testimony by phone during today's meeting, please review the instructions posted on the Clerk of the Board's webpage. Also note for the record that Supervisor Desmond will be absent. With that, I will now call the roll. Supervisor Anderson. Supervisor Anderson? Supervisor Lawson-Remer?
Here.
Vice Chair Vargas?
Vargas here.
Chair Fletcher?
Fletcher here. No, Anderson.
Anderson.
Okay, you got him. We will begin with the invocation and pledge of allegiance. The invocation this morning will be delivered by Reverend Dan Koschel, to be immediately followed by the pledge. Please rise.
Decisions. Thank you for the hard work of so many people to help the progress in dramatically reducing the number of COVID-19 cases and the incredibly promising numbers of vaccinations. As the pandemic brought us together as one in tragedy, may we work together on the many issues weighing on us. Give us strength, courage, focus, and resolve that will help reassure our citizens during these days. As a famous leader in another California city, Harvey Milk once said, "You gotta give them hope. And however we call you, Creator, you are embodiment of hope, giving us strength for today and bright hope for tomorrow. For this and so much more, we give you thanks. Amen."
Thank you. Please join in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next on the agenda is non-agendized public communications. This is an opportunity for the public to weigh in on issues that are within the board's jurisdiction but not on today's agenda. The only action the board may take is a referral to the Chief Administrative Officer. Reminder, according to Rule 4A, members of the public that are non-English speaking and need interpretation will receive twice the allotted time. At this point, I'll ask the clerk to call forward our non-agendized public speakers.
Thank you, Chair Fletcher. We have 4 requests to speak on matters not listed on the agenda. Any members of the public that requested to speak during non-agenda public communication, please dial into the conference line now using the instructions that were provided to you. We will begin with the in-person speakers. So when I call your name, if you could please approach the podium. You'll have 2 minutes to address the board. Catherine Anderson and Audra Morgan. And we'll ask you to please state your name for the audio record.
My name is Catherine Anderson. The United States Senate recently announced publicly on TV that the American people have been misled over the coronavirus and vaccines after the public release of Dr. Fauci's email. Senator Blackburn, Senator Vaughn, Senator Marshall all spoke curable information was suppressed, like using ivermectin to treat the coronavirus. These bills, AB 262 and AB 389, pulling people's addresses, obtaining medical records, immunizations, and choosing or deeming who's a threat and placing them into FEMA camps is inhumane and unconstitutional. This sounds more like a totalitarian government. As a consequence of the foregoing, we respectfully request that the county approve, adopt, and ratify an ordinance that clears, interprets Cal HSC 1201.75.5 as follows. Section 1201.75.5 will never be interpreted to 1, permit the county public health officer to remove citizens of San Diego County from their residence under any circumstance unless the citizen's own primary care physician or physicians elected by the residents to be removed has been determined that said residence is currently infected with a communicable disease that poses a significant threat to the community. And 2, that citizens must be afforded all due processes rights under the law, irrespective of any emergency powers San Diego County purports under operating under. We also are requesting that San Diego County Board of Supervisors take our concerns to the State Assembly by submitting our letter that was provided to you at the last Board Supervisors meeting on June 8th. More information needs to be heard from the Senate. Thank you.
Next speaker, please.
I'm Audra. As I speak to you today, I'm appalled at the lack of empathy for the place we find ourselves in. As you are due to get an award, Mr. Fletcher, for wiping away the tears, we are fighting for our very lives, doing everything we can every day to stop the tyrannical measures you and those in power have placed before us, stripping away our freedoms one by one until you get to our life and toss it away. You should be concerned about the elephant in every room, not promoting yourself on how good you've been through this pandemic, especially when it's based on data that no one can access. We're just supposed to trust you. Well, your ties to the World Economic Forum, Klaus Schwab, the UN, and the whole Build Back Better crap is proof of who you are. You are bought and paid for by the elite who are pushing this nefarious agenda. It's clear and disgusting that you're even claiming to wipe away the tears, yet we are being faced with coordinated efforts for HHS directors statewide to be weaponizing to become local FEMA through AB 262, AB 389, and CMS 9115-F. They will enforce the shot, and if we do not comply, they will have the authority to remove us from our home by way of tax-paid mobile health units as we will be deemed a health threat. And if they pair those with AB 988, they can label us a 5150 and take our guns as well. That is why these bills are so dangerous, especially when they're being used to force the populace to vaccinate with gene therapy, all without unhindered informed consent, making adverse reactions possible, all of them known to the test subjects. This is experimental and not approved by the FDA. This type of vaccine killed every animal in the study. People are dying from the vaccine, but it's hidden and kept from those who deserve to know the truth. Antibody dependency enhancement will happen. People will become spike protein making factories affecting every cell in their body, leading to cytokine storms and death, blood clots and spontaneous abortion, miscarriage, brain pitting, myocarditis, infertility, both men and women, just to name a few. The spike protein accumulates in the reproductive organs, bone marrow, lymph nodes, and can lead to cancer, autoimmune disease, paralysis, Guillain-Barré, and more. In fact, HIV and Ebola are being found in the vaccinated.
Thank you, ma'am. Your time is up.
Thank you.
We'll now hear from those who requested to speak by phone. We'll be calling speakers by the last 4 digits of your phone number. You'll hear a notification that your call has been unmuted. You will then need to press *6 to unmute your line. Well, I'll ask you to please state your name for the audio record. I'll also remind the callers they should mute their TV or live video stream before they begin speaking. And if you could please identify the first caller.
Our first caller is 7772. 7772, please press *6 to unmute.
Hi, this is Danielle Nuzell-Myers. I am a resident of Normal Heights. I'm also a volunteer in the Vera House Community Garden. The community found out this week that the garden's been listed for sale by a private owner for $400,000. It's served our community for the past 29 years, and we're asking the city of San Diego to help us either, give us more time to crowdfund and raise funds for this sale, or to actually help support us in purchasing this land to be used as a green space for our community. We have started a petition on change.org that has more than 800 signatures so far, just supporting this cause and, asking the city of San Diego for their help and advice on what we can do next to make sure that we preserve this land. We've also been talking with KPBS, the Union Tribune, Univision, Fox 5, NBC7, and there's just been an outcrying of public support in our community and beyond for keeping this land. So thank you for considering this as part of your agenda, and we really appreciate any support that we can get. And we're asking the city of San Diego to please purchase this land. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be 2703. 2703, please press *6 to unmute.
I'm Larry Seitz. As I'm sure you are aware, the current COVID vaccines were only authorized for emergency use, meaning everyone taking them is part of an experimental drug test. Moderna has never successfully released an mRNA vaccine. All live animals tested resulted in the death of the test subjects. There are thousands of deaths from COVID vaccines so far, per the government vaccine adverse event reporting system. That's more than the total of all approved vaccines for decades. The swine flu vaccine testing was halted after only 50 deaths. So there is good reason for healthy people or those with medical or religious reasons to decline to be vaccinated at this time. At the recent budget town hall Zoom meeting, I asked Nathan Fletcher via the public text chat, quote, can you ensure that the funds for ambulances in the fire protection district will not be used for forcibly vaccinating people? And he replied verbally with a promise that no one was going to be forced as it was voluntary. So today I rhetorically asked, how can you call vaccination voluntary when our government officials from Biden to Newsom are planning and encouraging employers, stores, and even Petco Park to require some form of passport for full and unrestricted access to society? I understand Petco even has separate entrances for those privileged versus those considered unworthy. At age 70, I remember when it was thought okay to segregate people for other reasons. I thought we were past that. You should all be ashamed to permit this. Thank you.
Thank you, and that concludes non-agenda public comment this morning.
Thank you. Before we get into our budget process, the clerk has a brief announcement regarding our budget hearing today.
Thank you, Chair Fletcher and members of the board. On May 6, 2021, the Chief Administrative Officer's recommended operational plan for fiscal years 2021 through 2023 was released. Today marks the official beginning of the budget hearings for the board to receive oral testimony in all areas of the budget. For members of the public that requested to provide testimony by phone, please dial into the conference line now using the instructions that were provided to you. Thank you, Chair Fletcher.
Thank you. We're gathered here today to hold the Board of Supervisors budget hearing for fiscal year 21-22. Although we have held previous budget presentations for the public, that was generally informational to educate the public about what is in the budget. Today opens our official budget hearing where we expect to get feedback from the public about what they would like to see more or less of in the budget. Again, we remain in listening mode. There's no action as a Board of Supervisors to take other than to have a public hearing. We also have another budget hearing, an evening budget hearing on Wednesday, June 16th at 5:30 p.m. After both of these hearings, supervisors and the Chief Administrative Officer can submit new requests for consideration into the budget called a budget change letter up until June 23rd. Then we will hold budget deliberations where we will vote on the final budget around June 30th. The proposed budget that you'll hear about today, again, is guided by our framework for the future adopted by the board in January. We have made a commitment that this new board will govern differently, both with our priorities, along with our commitment to transparency and equitable investments in communities throughout San Diego. And I'm very proud to see the budget principles reflected as the foundation of the document we have before us: equity, inclusion, sustainability, racial, social, and environmental justice, transparency, and outcomes-based governing. Cornerstone of good government is the opportunity for public participation, and today marks another opportunity along with the many we have done before. To begin today's hearing, we're going to hear from our Chief Administrative Officer, Helen Robbins-Myers, short video, and then we will receive a presentation kicked off by our Chief Financial Officer. Helen, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Fletcher and members of the board. As you know by now, the recommended budget is the largest, both in dollars and in staff years, and we intend to use these resources to carry out your board's strategic framework to meet the needs of our community. With all of the new and continuing challenges the region faces, from the pandemic to the calls for social and environmental justice, increasing behavioral health needs, homelessness, fire safety, and everything in between, this budget needed to enable bold and aggressive action. The recommended budget does just that. It contains proposed expenditures of slightly over $7 billion and staffing increases that will put us over 18,000 staff years. These are significant expansions of our investment to meet the needs of our diverse communities. Another goal of this budget cycle was to increase the transparency of the budget process and interaction with the public. Our detailed budget presentations last month, along with 3 interactive evening community forums and Zoom budget meetings with members of the ISDF Coalition, these were all key steps to accomplishing that goal. By increasing engagement and fiscal transparency, we aim to build stronger relationships and trust within the broad community we serve. For individuals unable to participate in any of these forums, we also have a robust fiscal website, budget.sandiegocounty.gov, where you can discover a wealth of information that is both user-friendly and accessible in multiple languages. Our goal today is simple. It is to provide you a high-level overview of what is in the recommended budget. Ebony Shelton, our Chief Financial Officer, will walk you through the key elements. And then we want to hear from you, the public, today as well as during the evening hearing mentioned by the chair. This is critical for informing any budget change letters necessary prior to final deliberations and budget adoption on June 29th. With that as our outline, and before I hand things over to Ebony, let's set the stage for the public hearings with a short introductory video. It's a new day in San Diego County. Together with our Board of Supervisors, we have built a budget that is based on a bold and promising new strategic framework, one that addresses the needs of all of our residents, one that teaches us a new way to operate and reprioritizes our resources.
This budget moves our county in a new direction that is consistent with the voices of the community who expect us to change. Earlier this year, our board adopted our framework for the future, which says our priorities will be ensuring an equitable recovery and making significant investments around issues of homelessness, housing, tackling climate change, air quality, environmental justice, and of course, behavioral health. And I think we're moving in the right direction.
This budget is built through an equity lens that looks to engage with everyone in our region, especially the most vulnerable. Our budget should be a reflection of our community's values and priorities. Now more than ever, our budget priorities should be investing in the communities hardest hit by the pandemic. The same communities that have been impacted for decades by economic and environmental inequities.
District 2 houses the most unincorporated residents. In fact, it's more than all 4 of the districts combined. So our budget is so important to that community as it is to all the county, but we fight fires, we need infrastructure, so these budget items mean so much to District 2.
Our new budget will advance environmental sustainability and environmental justice, tackling climate change and protecting our native habitats, open spaces, and coastlines. It will protect the human rights of all San Diegans by expanding access to housing, access to services, and access to justice for all. It will integrate data, evaluation, and evidence-based policymaking in all that we do so that we can make San Diego County work for everyone.
Prioritizing your tax dollars is one of the most important things we do each and every year through the budget cycle. Due to this past year and all the things that happened with COVID, our focus needs to be on getting our economy back, getting our businesses back open, getting our children back in schools, and getting back to as normal as we can possibly be.
Together with our Board of Supervisors, our 18,000 employees, our contract partners, and most importantly, you, our residents, we are stronger. Together, we will achieve our vision to equitably build better health, live safely, and thrive.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair. Good morning, members of the board. For those who may be listening for the first time today, I'd like to briefly summarize the contents of the CAO's recommended operational plan. discuss some current projections for the general fund based on the anticipated impact of referrals to budget and known change letters, and then conclude the presentation with a look to the future. On May 26th and 27th, county staff presented an overall budget of just over $7 billion and nearly 18,500 staff years for you to consider. Next slide, please. The recommended budget is an increase of $480 million, or 7%, and investments are being made to promote equity by investing in people. Staff seek to make this budget a budget for all county residents, especially the most vulnerable. The three primary drivers influencing this year's budget growth include the restart of the county's capital program, resources to continue regional leadership in the COVID-19 response, and to support investments in our workforce. Next slide. As we move on to staffing, you may recall the Air Pollution Control District became an independent agency in March. Adjusting for this transition, staffing levels are increasing by 660 staff years, or FTEs. When APCD is included in the overall numbers, the overall increase in staff is 496. With that said, our workforce delivers the services, smiles, vaccines, and so much more that make this county successful. We're adding additional staff in the next budget to ensure that those who need our services the most have access to what they need. Half of the staffing increase will bolster our essential safety net services, provide treatment and wraparound services to our most vulnerable and at-risk populations, and help San Diego's working families navigate through the county to get access to resources. The other half of the staffing increase is concentrated in public safety, including additional nurses, health and mental health staff, to provide services to victims of crimes, for juvenile diversion, and to improve public defense. Staffing is also being added in public works, in land use activities, for legal services, and to promote community outreach and engagement. Next slide, please. General purpose revenues are your board's only source of discretionary revenues, and they are projected to increase next year by $131 million, or 9%, to just under $1.6 billion. These revenues are allocated to county services based on an analysis of available program revenues, federal or state service delivery obligations, and the priorities of your board and the strategic direction set forward. County general purpose revenues are highly dependent on the assessed value of real estate, and although local median home prices are seeing intense growth, overall valuations could be impacted by COVID-19's effect on commercial property values. For this budget, staff is recommending an assessed value growth assumption of 3%. This year's budget makes no formulaic increases to allocations of general purpose revenue, but instead redirects those general purpose revenues to new priorities of your board while maintaining our long-term strategy to prepare for future labor, pension, and capital costs. Now that we've reviewed the recommended budget, let's briefly discuss the current projection for the county's general fund balance sheet based on what we're anticipating in the CAO change letter and various actions your board has referred to budget for consideration during deliberations. These projections have been updated to reflect recent referrals to budget and priorities areas identified by your board during staff presentations last month. The CAO's recommended budget, released in May, assumed the use of $145.5 million of unassigned fund balance. If your board takes action to approve all referrals to budget, an additional $63.9 million of unassigned fund balance will be required to balance the budget. Based on the estimated general fund reserve minimum target, this will result in a draw of $64.1 million below the minimum. It's also important to note that based on the referrals to budget that we're anticipating to finance with this general fund balance, that the county will need to find an additional $23 million in general purpose revenue or other program revenues in order to make the program sustainable over the long term. Using general fund balance for startup costs to programs at this magnitude is not sustainable as a long-term strategy and could create structural budget deficits. We're all looking forward to putting the fiscal year of 2021 in the rearview mirror for a lot of different reasons, and looking ahead, the future for San Diego County is bright. And next year can be very strong in terms of growth and recovery for our community. We have diversity in the customers that we serve, in our workforce, as well as in the businesses that comprise our local economy here. In the year ahead, we will leverage that strength as we move through this recovery phase. And I'm confident that together we can achieve the goals that were set by your board's framework to produce the outcomes that the community needs. In May, you heard many wonderful accomplishments and objectives from county departments. The board and the public asked insightful questions. The county is financially solvent and operationally strong. And as we always know, there are risks. In this economic recovery, we're optimistic about how San Diego will recuperate post-COVID-19. But if things don't go according to plan, or if the recovery is slower than expected, the county could miss its revenue targets and experience unanticipated increases to caseloads and safety net programs. We're all lucky to live here in America's finest city, but it's certainly not cheap to live here. The residential housing market didn't miss a beat during COVID and actually accelerated its growth. You'll also always hear me talk about retirement costs, and retirement costs are a good thing. I'm grateful that we can provide our hardworking employees with a defined benefit plan. And finally, we'll all, of course, need to stay healthy as a community this year. The subject to your questions, that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me ask my colleagues if they have any initial comments or questions before we go to public comment. We'll certainly have a chance to come back to the board. All right, not seeing any, let me ask the clerk to call forward our public speakers at this time.
Thank you, Chair Fletcher. We have 12 requests to speak, 3 in person and 9 requesting to speak by phone. Any members of the public that requested to provide comments on the recommended operational plan by phone, please dial into the conference line now using the instructions that were provided to you. We will begin with the in-person speakers. I'll be calling speakers. I'll call all 3 of you. When I call your name, please line up on the physical distancing stickers in the hallway outside the board chamber on the 3rd floor and enter the chamber one at a time to address the board. I'll also ask you to please state your name for the audio record. I'll invite forward Audra Morgan, Jody Root, and Gisela Mayworm. And again, you'll have 2 minutes to address the board.
Shoot. Sorry, I lost. Okay. There's evidence that proves that they made these vaccines spread like a disease as a mutation, as the mutations or even variants of spike proteins now being made by these vaccines in everyone who took them. In fact, Delta mutation here is associated with the vaccine spike proteins and no one is talking about it. When there are treatments available yet they're hidden, that's a problem. You're doing this to children. That's unacceptable when they have no say. You will use CPS, CMS, and FEMA to manipulate and ensure children take this. That is evil. This is experimental, yet you want to push it upon everyone. I cannot take it. So for you, Mr. Fletcher, to say that you suggest everyone gets it, that sounds like a threat to me. Your ignorance about the shots is pretty evident as you promote them all like it's the next best thing to candy. What happened to DARE? Suddenly you're all peddling drugs and it's all good. You cannot vaccinate against a virus. It mutates from person to person. It's ridiculous. Even when it's ridiculous when we have to tell you these things, you should know being the position you currently hold. Do you even know what GINA is? I suggest you look it up. It has to do with your software program, AKA your DNA and protection for that information. People are trusting Dr. Fauci, who has been called out as the creator of COVID-19 and still trust what he has to say. His leaked emails are enough to stop mass PCR tests and the vaccines, yet we are here today talking about this as if none of it's true. I'm not a doctor, yet I seem to know more about the panel, about this than the panel, which includes the doctors. That's disturbing, to say the least. You're either cognitively dissonant, knowing these things, and acquiescing to the people pulling your strings, or you're uneducated enough to handle these matters. If you really knew, you'd stop these vaccines. And we shouldn't even be paying attention to this. What we need to look at is a BSL level 4 lab in Manhattan, Kansas that is located on a college campus in Tornado Alley 1 dealing with zoonotic diseases using gain-of-function research, and they are without a cure. NBEF must be stopped. And the fact that you haven't even looked into this fraudulent election is a problem, because you're going to have to at some point. Either you do it yourself or we're going to come to you and you're going to have to be forced to do it. That is your job. And if you don't, we will remove you.
Thank you. Your time is up.
You're on notice.
Could you please state your name for the audio record?
Audra.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Morning, I'm Jody Root. I'm a 44-year resident of Alpine. I'm here to oppose the proposed, what's referred to in the budget as the Alpine Local Park and the $10.5 million appropriation that's in the budget. When the county purchased the property adjacent to Wright's Field Preserve in Alpine, we quite frankly were delighted. Right after the purchase, the county proposed a 12 to 15 acre nature-based passive park, which was consistent with the feedback from Alpine residents. Now the proposal is a 26-acre park that includes a baseball field, 7 acres of natural turf grass, pickleball and basketball courts, a 300-car parking lot with a covered solar roof, a bike all-wheel park, permanent residence for security, and other amenities. This is not what was promised. It is not what is needed, and quite frankly would destroy an existing preserve, being Wright's Field. Thank you.
Your next speaker, please.
Hi, I'm Gisela Mayworms. Thank you for the opportunity to let me talk. Okay, the reason that I'm here is I'm enthusiastic to see changes and improvements in our county, in particular, all the programs that you are trying to reach. One of my concerns that is seriously affecting me is the security inside the parks. I think it's very important to improve that. Yesterday, I was, for example, at Balboa Park, and close by the cottages and the bathroom, I found a homeless, like noontime. He was yelling. He was like transgender, oh, I don't know. And the person was very aggressive with obscenities, and it was very intimidating. And I tried to find any security in the park, no one around to reach and to find out in a circumstance of that. The other thing is I noticed, for example, in Balboa Park, in the village for the artists in the Prado, the artists, their galleries, they are continuously in threat by homelessness that they are taking from their telephone lines, intimidating the people in the area is disgusting. And so I would like to see more an outreach, you know, like a PERT, more intervention, more accountability. I understand that there may be with mental problems, but I think the public would deserve to have a better environment and more secure. So that would be very important. The other thing that I would like to see, and I live in Point Loma, is about the Liberty stations. I see a lot of vacancies. That would be nice for art, you know, how I can reach that for that, because I would like to promote. Thank you.
Thank you. Your time is up. We'll now hear from those that requested to speak by phone. We'll be calling speakers by the last 4 digits of their phone number. You'll hear a notification that your call has been unmuted. You will then need to press *6 to unmute your line. We'll ask you to please state your name for the audio record, and I'll remind the callers that they should mute their TV or live video stream before they begin speaking. And if you could please identify the first caller.
Our first caller is 8569. 8569. Please press *6 to unmute.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Okay, good. Good morning, Chairman Fletcher, Supervisors. My name is Frank Landis, and I'm the Conservation Chair of the San Diego chapter of the California Native Plant Society, and I wanted to make a few comments. One is that CNPS fully supports investing in sustainability, including the comprehensive native plant landscaping policy, regional sustainability plan, sustainability and natural resource reorganization, and Office of Environmental Justice. If the county has any hope of going carbon neutral by 2035, this effort needs to grow rapidly. The second is that we support investment in a functioning climate action plan. If more money would expedite getting it written, that also would be a worthwhile investment. Third, CNPS supports the county increasing investments in county parks and in the multiple species conservation program. With next year's budget of only $7.5 million for land acquisition out of a total of $294 million by 2041, it appears that the county is underfunding land acquisition for the MSCP by at least half. Please double this budget to meet the growing biodiversity and climate crises and support to the statewide 30 by 30. Fourth, and in contrast, why is $10.5 million being proposed for Alpine County Park, mislabeled in the budget as the Alpine Local Park? This highly controversial proposal, with its water-hungry turf, GHG-emitting pavement and concrete, astroturf, and unsustainable needs for expensive maintenance and upkeep, isn't a local park and is not what Alpine residents want. Given the lack of funding for MSCP acquisitions, I would suggest downsizing this item and giving Alpine a sustainable local park, not an unsustainable white elephant that would be impossible to maintain or repair in the carbon-neutral county of 2035. Given how the glut of golf courses has led to land use kerfuffles across the county, does it really make sense to concretize current recreation fads in another set of expensive playgrounds? This is budgeting for the past, not for the future. Difficult as the future appears, I hope that the county budget embraces it and helps us all move forward. Thank you very much for taking my comments.
Thank you. Our next caller is 9358. 9358, please press *6 to unmute.
Good morning. My name is Angelina Corsani with the Center on Policy Initiatives and the Invest in San Diego Families Coalition, calling in to share input on the San Diego County proposed budget for fiscal year 2022. Budgets are not just financial documents, they are moral documents that represent what our elected representatives have chosen to prioritize. For decades, the priorities represented in this county's budget did not align with the needs of our local communities. But this year, unprecedented steps have been taken to begin shifting and reshaping our government and to begin constructing a budget that better supports the health and well-being of all San Diego residents. I commend and appreciate this board, its new leaders, and county staff who have worked tirelessly these past few months to make these changes that are necessary and long overdue. Completely transforming a deep-seated status quo is not an easy task, and this year's budget does not necessarily reflect all of the systemic changes that our communities need and that our coalition is fighting for. A disproportionate amount of funds continue to be spent on the budget for the Sheriff's Department, policing, and incarceration. Furthermore, the budget for the Sheriff's Department does not uphold the values of transparency and accountability that this board has promised to uphold. Today, the Invest in San Diego Families Coalition calls on the Board of Supervisors to stand with our communities and ensure that the budget for the Sheriff's Department is held to the same standards as any other department that receives county dollars. To ensure transparency and accountability of how public dollars are being used, the Board of Supervisors should call for an audit of the Sheriff's budget that must be conducted by the county within the next 180 days. This audit should include, but not be limited to, the components that will be shared in a letter submitted to the board by the ISDF Coalition this week, in addition to any other information requested by the public in the next 60 days. Please stand with us, and before this budget cycle comes to a close, make this commitment to conducting an audit of the Sheriff's Department budget within the next 180 days. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be 0285. 0285, please press *6 to unmute.
Hello, my name is Jonah Gula, and I also wanted to express my opposition for the budget for the Alpine County Park. It was kind of fitting in the intro video that you played that or kind of ironic that it said that the budget reflects listening to the public, tackling climate change, protecting native habitat. And really this park goes against all of that. The process in which it's been planned Parks and Rec has not listened to the public. They have not been honest about the survey data. The survey data show that this is not the park that the people of Alpine want. And like one of the previous speakers said, it will be put on top of sensitive native habitat. It will be going against the climate action plan. I mean, the list goes on. So I just urge the board to rethink funding for this park because it goes against the values and the things that have already been stated just in this meeting that you guys are hoping to accomplish with this budget, and to rethink the park as a whole, but especially right now to not move forward with approving money for this project that's been extremely rushed and is not what the community wants. So thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 9650. 9650, please press *6 to unmute. 9650. Please press star 6 to unmute.
Good morning. I'm George Barnett from Alpine. I'm a 3-term member of the Alpine Community Planning Group. I'm speaking in favor of the Alpine County Park. Less than 20% of the recommended county guidelines for park for recreation and health exists in Alpine. We are really deficient. It's a social equity issue as well. Environmental justice and social equity. 2/3 of the people that live in Alpine have no access to any sort of park. They do not live in gated communities. They do not live where there's homeowners associations. They need this park for mental health, physical health, and recreation. I want to compliment the county on designing in fire breaks and emergency wildfire evacuation capacity in this park. It's a great facility. The county and the people of Alpine have wanted it for 20 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 3651. 3651, please press star 6 to unmute.
Good morning, Chair Fletcher and members of the board. I'm Dan Shea. I'm the CEO of Feeding San Diego, and I appreciate the opportunity to address you as you deliberate the county's budget. Feeding San Diego in just the past year provided over 32 million meals for those in need, approximately 40% more than the year before as a result of the pandemic. We have hundreds of community partners, hundreds of both food donors and food rescue partners, and thousands of volunteers. And that is still not enough to take care of all who go hungry in San Diego County. We have one mission: to feed people. Feed the hungry with the ultimate goal of ending hunger in San Diego at some point in time. A couple of weeks back, the board approved a framework for the allocation of the Federal American Rescue Plan Act funds. We greatly appreciate the recommended $20 million commitment to food insecurity issues targeted to such things as food banks, pantries, community gardens, and senior programs. As we look at this proposed budget, we also appreciate the recognition for the need of increasing funding for self-sufficiency services, including CalFresh, along with the need for food assistance for seniors. As I'm sure you know, and I'll just say again for the record, hunger, food insecurity impacts every corner of San Diego County, all 5 of the districts, our cities, and our unincorporated areas. While it's very clear how the pandemic has exacerbated the hunger crisis, we're also seeing how folks from all walks of life are affected in ways they never expected. Food insecurity is affecting not only low-income people, but also many who never thought they would need assistance ever. The combination of job loss and the rising cost of goods and services, fuel, housing, etc., have put many in a position of seeking help, feeding their families. Not only are they food insecure, the loss of dignity around having to ask for help for the first time ever is devastating for them. We are often frustrated knowing how many people are in need yet do not come forward. That is why we strongly support the county's efforts to enroll hundreds of thousands of people, especially seniors, in CalFresh, and to do so in a timely manner, including through partnerships such as ours with community-based organizations. Feeding San Diego has enjoyed the relationship we have developed with HHSA and San Diego County and appreciates your support. We look forward to those partnerships continuing towards our joint goals of building better health. You will hear a bit more from us as you continue your budget deliberations. Thank you, and again for your support and the opportunity to address the board.
Thank you. This concludes oral public testimony in the budget today. The board will reconvene on Wednesday, June 16th at 5:30 p.m. to receive additional public testimony on the budget. Members of the public may still provide written testimony in the budget. To comment online on the budget, please visit the county's website at budget.sandiegocounty.gov. Testimony must be in writing and received no later than the close of the budget hearings, which is Wednesday, June 23rd, 2021 at 5 p.m. All materials received will be distributed to the board, the Chief Administrative Officer, the Office of Financial Planning, and placed in the public record. Change letters from board members and the Chief Administrative Officer are also due to the Clerk of the Board by the close of the budget hearings on Wednesday, June 23rd, 2021 at 5 p.m. Law precludes the clerk from accepting change letters after the deadline. All change letters received will be distributed to the board, the chief administrative officer, and the Office of Financial Planning shortly after that 5 p.m. deadline. Budget deliberations and adoption are scheduled for Tuesday, June 29th, 2021 at 2 p.m. Subject to any final comments from the chair, this will adjourn until Wednesday, June 16th at 5:30 p.m. for the continuation of the budget hearings.
Thank you. Let me ask my colleagues if they have any comments or questions before we adjourn. All right, seeing none, I appreciate all the work that has gone into this. I appreciate the next iteration, what our meeting is today, and the development of this budget. I look forward to our evening hearing Wednesday evening and then continued budget deliberations throughout the change process. Thank you all for joining us, and with that, we will stand adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.